everyone, and you welcome another appointment with POP, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that changes your life forever. So, today we talk about narcissistic mothers with Amanda Lewitt. I said correct your surname, Amanda?
Well, it's an English name, so it's a
Exactly.
challenge. They pronounce it love it.
Love it. Okay, Amanda Lewitt. Thank you to be here today.
Thank you.
Today we talk about narcissistic mothers because is underrated problem in the society.
It's a very
Correct?
hidden one.
So, where do you want to start? Can you describe your childhood grow up with your mom?
It was an interesting childhood because my parents were quite old, I suppose, when they had me. So quite often at school, people would think that my mother was my grandmother, and that would highly offend her. She was a very beautiful woman when she was younger. And very conscious of her beauty. And that caused some issues when I was born. So obviously I had curly hair, and she had curly hair until she was pregnant. And that also coincided with menopause and her hair changed. My father caught me when I was 3 years old using my mother's hand cream and a hairbrush to straighten out my curls. And when he asked me why, I said, because Mum might like me if my hair's straight. Because she said
Wow.
that her hair changed when I was born and therefore it was my fault. As a 3-year-old, I perceived it was my fault that her hair wasn't as nice as she liked it to be.
So you try to straight your hair to
be liked.
feel loved?
And I think that's where it starts with the transactional love that's created by a mother like that. So I was trying to have a transaction of I will straighten my hair and then she'll like me. So you set yourself up, you're set up to fail in that regard.
When you realized that she was a narcissistic, what is a narcissistic mother?
I think it's somebody that is there for themselves and not for their child, which tends to go against what society thinks a mother should be. As a mother, you're there for your child. You're there when they need you. And I have adult children now, and even then, if I'm needed, I'm there. I don't think twice. I just go and help them whenever I can. And I can't imagine not doing that. But when it's flipped around, and another term that is used quite often is a parentified child, where you become the parent. It's your responsibility to do stuff for them, which again flips the natural order and creates a lot of anxiety, I think.
Wow. Okay. And when you realized that she had this problem?
I certainly didn't know the name for it when I was a child, but I was 4.5 when I realized something was wrong. And that was when she didn't want to go to her father's funeral because she wouldn't cope. And I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral either. And I was very close to him and I understood what had happened and I wasn't allowed to go. And I remember feeling uneasy, going, this isn't right. I should be there. My grandmother went. My father went to support his mother-in-law. I couldn't work out why I wasn't allowed to go and why the reason given to me was because I need you here. So her needs outweighed her mother's and in fact mine, because I wanted to go and say goodbye to my granddad too. And I'd understood that was the concept, that, that was what was happening, because my grandmother had explained it to me, that, he got very sick, he was very old, and he died. So she was very diplomatic and simple in her terms, but she got the message across with a lot of love and care. So she was an amazing woman, very grateful that she was there.
So it looked like that your grandma and your ma were two very different personalities.
Extremely so. Yeah, there was no similarities between those two.
What was the relationship between your mom and the rest of the world, with the mother and then your?
To put it bluntly, I suppose it was all about her, which is the definition of narcissism, really, is that their needs, their wants, everything about them outweighs everybody else's. And so it was very much like that for my dad. They had extremely different backgrounds. She was West Australian, born and bred, an 8th generation Australian whose World War II experiences consisted of living in a cute little country town in Western Australia, and life went on pretty much as normal. My father was born in Eastern Europe and was a partisan child fighter. His brother was in a concentration camp. His father's family were Jewish. The most stereotypical, horrific childhood that you could have in Eastern Europe. And she belittled that, and she said that it couldn't have happened and that he lied. So that created doubt in his mind. His PTSD, mental illness, deteriorated at a rapid extent. He retired from work when he was 50. I was in a nursing home at 61 and died when he was 68. So, and I blame, when I was younger, definitely I blamed her for that. Now I can just say that it was a contributing cause. He had his issues and she had hers, but it certainly made life very interesting being the only other person in the house and being the go-between between those two completely different people. And I think Dad and I bonded by that, trauma bonding.
Bonding. You bonded surviving on her behavior.
Yes, very much.
What do you mean for you grew up with
No self-confidence, doubting positive emotions from other people. And that's lifelong. That's I've learnt to manage those things, but those things still, there's still certain moments where you go, no, I can't, I'm not good enough for this. It came out when I got married. I wanted to borrow the wedding dress that she had borrowed herself. And the comment was that she was young and she was beautiful and that I would ruin her memories. So I never got to even see the dress. I do now own the dress because the original owner gave it to me. But so then it didn't matter what wedding dress that I chose. It didn't feel that concept that I was not as beautiful as her, as thin as her. That challenged all of those things in my head. So yeah, I had a wedding dress, but it wasn't one that I fell in love with. I didn't have that moment. And in fact, I knew that what that experience of purchasing a dress was going to be like. And I actually took my fiance at the time with me. He chose my wedding dress. There was no surprises for him on our wedding day because he chose the dress. But I needed that third person there, and I needed that person with me to make that important decision, who I trusted and who I knew loved me. So it was really important that he did that for me.
So the wonder is, what do you think is how many people there is out there that grow up with narcissistic mother, and why do you think people don't talk about these things?
We don't talk about it because when you do put your head over the fence to say something, you are immediately greeted with, but it's your mother. It flies in the face of society's convention of what a mother should be and how children should respond to that. I always feel that it's a gateway towards domestic violence because if you're raised on transactional love, you don't know what it's like to have unconditional love.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's quite easy to get trapped into a cycle of, oh, well, I did that nice thing for them and they showed me love. And that's often how domestic violence relationships begin. The number of women that say, oh, but he changed. No, they didn't change. They just showed their true colours. And I think that the reason that we don't talk about it as much and we don't put the importance on it is simply because the child is the one that's victimised by that. And they're already victimised. They don't need to be victimised again. And I think that it's something that we really do need to talk about. I think that in the future it's going to become that what we've got now is the tip of the iceberg, and in the future it will be more open, and we've got to have more people that are willing to go, yep, that happened to me.
Can be that people do not talk about because it's scary to actually acknowledge that a figure like the mother can be actually dangerous as the father can be in a certain way. Okay. Now, I think a narcissistic father would have more violent tendency than the mother is. The mother is more emotional, probably, correct?
Coercive.
But anyway, the kids that grow up in this kind of situation, they are more open to find narcissistic personality because we're searching people that are very connected to our history.
Exactly.
Correct? So our brain Tell us, narcissistic is what I know, and
Mm.
narcissistic is what I think it can be good for me.
Mm. And it's a comfort zone. And this is why so many victims of domestic violence go from one partner to another with the same patterns until they recognize that, oh, hang on, I have to stop going into these patterns of relationships. And something that's often queried by victims of domestic violence is, why didn't anybody in the family pick this up? How did this woman not speak to their mother? That comes up so often, and obviously it's because that in certain situations the victim of the domestic violence has been so ingrained in her to not ask her mother for help, because her mother will say, well, what are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? Why is this happening? Well, you must be doing something wrong for this to happen. And then
Yeah.
bring up examples of what you've done in the past that is wrong, that created that feeling. So there's a lot of women that are in domestic violence situations. They've got no one to turn to, and particularly not who you would expect in a normal situation to go to.
How did you change this? What you have done for yourself to make sure that you were able to not follow this kind of patterns? Because I know your husband and he's a pretty cool guy. So how you did it?
The very first thing that I did was, I always say that, you can have the love of your life, but your soulmate's not necessarily the same person. And for me, my soulmate was a platonic friend that I met when I was 13 years old, and yeah, there was a life-changing friendship. And for the first time, I felt comfortable to say something about what it was like, and he identified it as well. This isn't normal behavior. And I apologized. He said, not you, your mother. That's not normal behavior. My grandmother was supportive. When I was in year 12, my final year of high school, I asked my grandmother if I could move in with her. I wanted to leave home when I was 16. So I need to get out of here. And she said, she was afraid of the reaction as well. She said, oh, you can't. What will we do about her? So she knew, but wasn't game enough to take any action. When I was 17, I just left home. I moved 600 kilometres away from her. And I tried to go no contact, but it was almost impossible because my father and my grandmother were there, so that didn't happen. So there was a number of times over the years that I moved or I tried to go no contact. It didn't work. And it was only when she was actually very old and in a nursing home that I finally went no contact. And that was with the support of my grown family that went, no, we can look after her. You don't need to do this anymore. So I was kind of let off the hook. But I was definitely an older person when I finally went. And for me, the no contact had to be the way that I went, because each contact was just opened up things again.
Wow, what you have done to change it is to make sure that you didn't follow the patterns to find someone like your mom.
I think a lot of a lot of self-work, a lot of NLP. I trained as an NLP practitioner. I've done therapy, I've read, I've journaled, I've done all the, I suppose you could say, stock standard self-help things. And I think becoming more aware and noting the behaviors so that I could see that in other people, and realizing that she was not the only person like that, but I was also not the only person. I started to speak up. I found my voice. So when someone, there'd be a cheesy meme on social media about, oh, my mother's so wonderful. I'm like, yeah, be careful, because not everyone has that relationship, and this can be quite triggering to some who can't speak up about it. And as soon as I started to do that, the bombarding of, yeah, I get that. Yes, that's me. Thank you. And that, just finding my own voice to go, look, this is what it is. And then I had a pivotal moment in 2024 when my aunt died. Now, she was an aunt that I didn't have a relationship with. I only met her once face to face. But I went to her funeral, and my uncle said to me that he knew I'd been emotionally abused and there was nothing he could do about it. And that, I felt seen. I felt seen by somebody that knew her, had experienced a lot of similarities in their relationship with her. And suddenly I felt seen. I was like, okay, it was not me. It was just that moment of it's not me. And that's something that I think we all, in people in that situation, we've got to get to that point of like, no, this is not, I didn't contribute to this. It's not my fault. And that lifting of blame and shame, it's a pivotal moment.
Would you have to tell us a story that happened to you when you were a kid that explain us, the people that do not understand what it means, live with a narcissistic personality and being emotionally abused as in a childhood? Can you tell us a story of something happened to you?
Oh, there's so many. My mother thrived on attention to her appearance. So from a young age, yeah, people that like other kids would go and play. I wasn't allowed to go and play. I wasn't allowed to ride a push bike. I wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses because she needed me, because she was afraid something might happen to me. So there was an overprotective factor there as well. Often it was to do with her own self-care, as in doing her nails, doing her hair, doing all these sorts of things. But like a lot of mothers and daughters do that sort of thing. They'll do manicures, they'll do hair, but the daughter gets attention as well. That was never the case. That was no. The wording was often, but it's not important. Mine's good, you're not. So there was a lot of those conversations, a lot of the expectation of my time being devoted to her. So it was quite coercive. If I wanted to be at school on time, I had to get up, do the housework, get her breakfast, get her lunch ready to go to work. Yeah, I was 9, 10 years old. So that role shifting of having to care for her house would be absolutely disgusting when I'd go to visit. The response was, well, you're not here to clean it. It's not my fault. So there was all those sorts of things. But I think the absolute moment for me was as an adult, and she was in hospital. And the child or the partner of every narcissist waits for that moment where they recognise and apologise. You're hanging on for that cliffhanger, constantly think this is going to be it. And at some ungodly hour through the night, she looked at me and she said, now we're at this point. There's something I have to say. And I thought, this is it. We've made it. And she said, I did love you when you were a child in my own way, but you weren't a good daughter. I thought, yeah, okay. Yeah, that sums up our relationship. So as I said, it was lifelong. It wasn't all about what happened in childhood. There were so many things over so many years. And if I tried to have a conversation, it would just get flipped. And I did learn certain behaviours, as in not showing negative emotion, not showing anger, not showing sadness, because they were target zones for her. And so that affects other relationships if you can't show that side of it.
Yeah. And how this affect your relationship with other people?
I become the strong one. I become strong for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean with that?
It was only quite recently. My husband thanked me for being the stoic, strong one, and it was a compliment, but it was also, yep, I did it again. And I don't, 99% of the time I don't mind that. That's who I am. But that ability to drop that, you lose that ability because you don't lose it, you never gain that ability. So gaining the ability to, and I think a lot of children of narcissists don't have that ability to be weak. Often the really strong people out there are the ones that have had that experience.
And the relationship with other people, other friends, other things, what was the impact with them?
Generally really good, and I think that's because of my grandma. Yeah, I had
You had this two power force were fighting on
Yes.
you, correct?
Yeah.
Over you, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, yeah, from quite a young age, I would say probably 8 years, 8 years of age was a really pivotal moment because that was when my father was diagnosed with mental health issues. It came to light because as an 8-year-old child, I was getting tension headaches, and 8-year-olds don't understand what that is. So I was at the doctor's and my mother was with me, and the doctor said to her, they talked over the top of me, and he said, "Does she know?" And she said, "No, she's too young." And he said, "But she needs to know." I sat there completely convinced that I had a brain tumor and I wasn't going to get my 9th birthday because of how they spoke. It was after that she deferred to a friend of hers to tell me that my father was mentally ill. And I thought, I've grown up with him. I've been to doctor's appointments with him. I've been told to put the blinds down at 3 o'clock because the Russians might come. I'm well aware my father's mentally ill. And even at that age, I thought, no, the elephant in the room here is she's mentally ill too, but they're not talking about that one. So, and the advice given to me by a nurse and a doctor at the time was build a brick wall up to protect yourself. I don't think we'd do that with kids now. That was a long time ago. But that was the advice given, build a brick wall.
A brick wall, a real brick wall.
Build a brick wall around yourself. Don't let her in. That was the advice given, which thankfully we don't give those advices anymore, but that was the advice at the time.
Wow. So you grew up with a challenging parents, both of them.
Very, yeah, yeah. Dad had a really good heart, but he had suffered a lot. And I think I just innately knew that because he told me about his childhood, he told me about his family. And so again, there was this inner turmoil for me. He's told me this, she has said it was a lie. And when I was just after my dad died, I actually went to meet his family for the first time. And so I got all the information from his brother and he confirmed everything. So, that's right. Yeah, that happened. Yep, that happened. So I learned, I found coming back to Australia and facing her really, really, that was a big challenge moment for me. Because I
What
thought,
happened? What happened?
again, I built my brick wall. I attempted to ask her a few things, but why did question her a little bit, but the reactions again, it was like, no, it's just, I'm not putting my energy into this. I had a young family and a busy life. I'm like, no, just no. I didn't pursue that with her at the time because I knew that it was just going to, it was going to go round in a very nasty circle, and I didn't want to. I think I reached the point where I go, I'm not going to play the game. Yeah, I took myself off the pitch and just, no, I'm not playing.
She has an effect on your kids as an individual.
Yes, yeah. She was close to my eldest. We always joked, said he was probably one of the few, well, he was one of the few people that she liked. I had a conversation with one of my other children when he was 3, and he said, she doesn't like me. And I said, well, when you go to kindy, there's kids that you don't like, isn't there? But you're still polite and respectful. Yes. I said, then that's what you have to do. It's okay for someone not to like you. It doesn't make any difference to who you are. It's okay.
Sorry, but so he came back at home and told you that your mom doesn't like you,
Yeah. And didn't like him.
doesn't like him.
Yeah. It's not easy when a 3-year-old tells you that their grandmother doesn't like them and it's your parent. So it was a learning opportunity to just say there will be people that don't like you, and that doesn't define who you are. That's okay.
If you can describe in few words what happened between you and her, what would you
Mhm.
do?
It was just an interesting way to grow up. But I think in hindsight, if I'd been able to keep that divide, if I'd been able to hold my ground, been strong enough to hold my ground of no contact so that I could then go through a healing process and perhaps come back to the table later, that would have been better. But I didn't have that opportunity. I was in a carer role for my grandmother, for my father, and then later, obviously, for her as well. So there was never that opportunity to do that kind of thing for me at that time. So the bulk of the healing's really been since she died, I think, because there's a real sense of peace.
Mm.
And I feel that she's at peace as well, because it couldn't have been easy for her either.
Yeah.
So I did feel a sense of pity towards her as well.
Live a life where you don't like anyone
Mm.
and you're not able to have any kind of good relationship as what the definition of good. No, we have a definition of good. Yeah, it must be hard for her as well.
I think she had those relationships with friends, but there was a certain barrier around her that her immediate family certainly weren't in that zone. A more distant family and friends, yes, but not the ones that you would expect to have been.
Have you ever spoke with her friends about this?
Most of them think that she was the best person that they knew. They saw a different side of her. There are some that acknowledge that I had a very different relationship with her.
Mm.
And that they feel sorry that I didn't share that as well, which is, it's very kind, and they're very close friends of mine as well. But there are some that have been quite attacking, because they only had her side of it. And at the time and during her life, I just felt that was not my place to do that, because she needed those close relationships in her life. And it wasn't my place to take those away by destroying her reputation with people that did like her and love her. So yeah, we're quite a different setup. And a couple of times, friends of hers tried to intervene or to advocate for me. They were very quickly not friends.
Very quick. So narcissistic is a little bit, is like living with a dictator.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. There is one way of doing things,
Yeah.
and it's not yours.
Mm. Yeah, we can see in a large scale what's going on in some places now in the world, correct?
Absolutely. When a narcissist gets more power than just their own household, it's a game changer.
It's trouble for everybody.
It is, yeah, because those behaviours then fall down through society as well, where it becomes, people think, well, it's acceptable to behave a certain way because somebody in power is behaving a certain way, and that's not good.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you learn about love, boundaries, relationship, all these things during all this period of your life with her?
As I think a lot of it I found was, I could see huge differences between transactional love and real love. Two examples spring to mind. My parents separated when they'd been married for 27 years. 3 years later, when it would have been their 30th anniversary, which traditionally is a pearl wedding anniversary, my mother demanded that I buy her pearl earrings to celebrate. I'm like, but you're not married anymore. But it's 30 years since I was a bride and I deserve it. We were a double income, no children house. So, yep, fine, have a pair of earrings. Essentially, if it shuts you up, I'll buy earrings. My father, on the other hand,
Sorry,
that was,
what happened if you didn't bought the earring?
well, I bought a lot of things, furniture, vehicles, electricals, you name it. If you didn't agree to the first one, it escalated.
In what way?
The need, or that urgent need for something, became a bigger, more expensive, more elaborate thing. I learnt to just get the little thing and get it out of the way rather than let it escalate. When about the same period of time, my father was in a nursing home, and I went to visit him one day, and there was $3.25 cash sitting on the chest of drawers. And what's that? And he said, that's for you. You don't owe me any money. He said, no, I told you when I win lotto, I give you half. That is half. So he'd won $6.50 in lotto, but he gave me $3.25. And it just highlights the difference. And I suppose
Yeah.
my learning from my dad was that it doesn't matter how small the gift is, just give, because it's going to make somebody's day better.
Mm. And what did you learn from yourself about love and boundaries and
My dad was always very respectful. I apologized once for not being with him on a significant day because there was something that I needed to do with my husband. And he just said, if ever you put me in front of your husband, you will be wrong. He is the important one. So and he never got to meet his two nephews. He'd been married previously, and the day that he died, tucked inside his Bible was a photo of his nephew and a photo of his first wife, because they were still important to him. He adored his mother-in-law. When we told him that she died, he said, I am the luckiest man on earth. And this was a man sitting in a nursing home at age 65. And he said, I'm the luckiest man on earth because God gave me two mothers. So he had that beauty of spirit and generosity with love. In contrast, the day that my grandmother died and she had promised me her wedding ring, within minutes of her death, my mother had removed the wedding ring and put it on a chain around her neck and told me I would never have it. So even in those deep moments, there was that thought of I'm more important was still absolutely there. I did eventually get the ring though,
of course, of course,
which I wear all the time.
you
It's
are,
104 years old and it is very, very special for me now. I got it eventually. I think we all do.
uh, this podcast is for couples, for relationship. And you married for how long you married now?
40 years next March.
40, wow, 40 years. What do you think is the secret of a long-term relationship, a long marriage, a successful long marriage? Because you have a very good relationship with your husband, three good kids. So what is the success of that? Even coming from challenges that you had in the past.
I think always putting the other one first. You have to have boundaries and hold your own ambitions, and I certainly have not done that in the past. But working together to have a common goal. We've never been great planners. We quite spur of the minute kind of people, but just being kind to each other. That if in my head I'm having a bad day and I'm angry about something, if I'm angry with him, yes, okay, I need to voice that in some way. But if I'm angry because the cat threw a fur ball or I broke a coffee mug, that doesn't give me a right to be angry at him. And that directing of, I think being very careful of how you direct negative emotions, you know, we've both been very good at that, in that if he's had a bad day at work, he doesn't come home and take that out on me. Which essentially just comes back down to being respectful and having those it's a really double-edged sword, because you need to have boundaries, but you need to always put the other one first. It's a weird combination to have a good marriage, I think.
Yes. Do you think is look, the other day I was talking with this couple that they are clients of mine. They're already over 70s. They do 45 years or 50 years, stuff like that. Um, Talking with him, he say, well, for us, it was about togetherness,
Mm.
doing things together. So they were skiing together. They are passionate about traveling together. They were doing things together. So they never left each other, aside a couple of times. Do you think this is the way, or you have?
I hope not, or my marriage would be failed. Because we really don't spend a lot of time together. Um, my husband works away overseas, interstate, all over the world. And he's done that for 30 years. So I've managed the children, I've managed the family, the house. But then I've done a lot of volunteer work that's required me to travel. So I travel for a few days at a time on my own. That also gave him the opportunity to the sole parent when I was away as well, that he looked after the kids full time during that time, which a lot of men don't get that privilege of doing because for whatever reason they don't. So we're more looking at, as we head towards retirement and a 40th anniversary, we're more looking at, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do together? Because we really, our volunteer roles occasionally join, but generally he does his and I do mine, and we kind of meet in the evening or once a fortnight.
Yes. Well, this make me think that is really true that every couple, every family, every relationship is different, and
Mm.
every relationship is a different way to actually being together.
That's right. It's
You know,
always different.
it's always different.
And you're both bringing different things from your past as well. And often, even as you get older, there'll be something will come up that is triggered by your past that you need to address in your current relationship.
Can you give me an example of this?
For me, it's when we are in the same bed at the same time, which obviously with a FIFO relationship, it's not constant. I cannot sleep facing him. If we're both facing the same each other, I can't sleep like that, because one of the things that my mother did frequently was if I was getting upset about something, or if I was trying to give a different perspective to her, she would blow in my face. So she would just go into my face. The memories of that are quite triggering at times. And so I can't sleep if he's facing me because I've got breath coming at me. So there's little things like that, but I had to explain to him, no, your breath doesn't smell. No, it's not an intimacy issue. This is the reason behind it. So there's things like that that still crop up that you've got to be open and say, this isn't about the current situation. This is something from the past that still is uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable to a point that I need to address it or to change. It's being both of us being aware of that.
Wow, the things that you just told me about the breath. Oh, the other day I was talking with a hypnotherapy that she worked with trauma, child trauma,
Mm.
and effect of the trauma, this trauma in our childhood. Um, and many times people ask me why we have to talk about this.
Mm.
It happened many years ago. Doesn't have nothing to do with that.
Yes,
No, it does. It does everything.
it
It's
does.
everything.
Yeah,
It's
and
everything.
and as I say, that example, if I didn't explain why I felt that way, then that would be seen as rejection, as antagonistic, as lacking intimacy, so many different negative connotations on my marriage that would bring up. But by saying, look, it's a minor thing. It's a minor thing in our daily life, but this is the reason behind it. And then
Oh yeah.
he's that regard, is that all? Okay.
No, but it's important. The good things is that you know what is.
Mm.
But
Mm.
if you're not aware why, and you cannot explain to your partner, and you
Exactly.
say, I don't like it.
Mm.
I don't like it. I don't want to do this. The other person can think, well, you reject me because maybe the
Exactly.
other person have the other opposite way to see these things. Maybe the other one say, for me, it's important that we look at each other before to sleep, for example. That can be a rejection where now you know what's going on.
Mm.
How did you understood this thing?
Oh, I think just self-analysis. Like, okay, that made me feel really uncomfortable. But it's why? Questioning myself. And that, I think that's a big part of having a relationship like I did as a child, is you do overanalyze. You analyze every single thing that you do to see why you got that reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
And so but that can be a good thing in the long term as well, because if you feel a negative way about a certain issue, you go, well, hang on, where did that come from? Why am I feeling like that? And what effect is that having on other people near me as well? So you do tend to, you go through stages of go, all right, now I need to work out why this is happening and deal with why that happened so that you can then let it go. It's a bit like having a giant to-do list. Yeah, right, I can tick that one off now.
What would you suggest to someone that is maybe young and go through a similar situation? What would what would you suggest to them to do?
If you can find a mentor, if you can find a safe person who has lived experience, they will be your greatest asset, because seeking professional help is vital as well. Absolutely vital. But depending on that therapist's point of view or their life experience, they may only have a clinical view of it and not a lived experience. And sometimes just having somebody in your life that has lived experience can be a real asset, because you're not alone.
Mm.
The narcissist is not going to go to therapy to get help. The victim is going to go to therapy to get help. And depending on how that therapist treats them, it can compound it. If they've had a great relationship, if they're not capable of having that level of empathy with their client, that they can go, okay, yeah, I have other people I've spoken to like this. I don't have lived experience, but I can understand where you're coming from. That's a real asset. But finding somebody that has a positive life, who has lived experience and has dealt with it, they're in your corner then.
Have you done therapy for this?
Yes.
And how was it for you?
I think I got it at the wrong time. I think I got it far too far after the event, and then that was because there were some other issues going on, but then the opinion essentially was, well, you've already dealt with it, yeah,
So you did the work for you.
okay.
Now, last two questions. And so what are the tools that people out there have a same situation can use straightforward to start to the healing process? Give me two tools.
Self-care. That you have to be able to prioritize your own health, mentally and physically. If you're living in that experience, if you're still in that lived experience, then you have to get out and do stuff for yourself. You have to pull back so that you have some headspace that's away from that person to be able to mentally breathe.
Mm.
So self-care, you've got to be able to do it. And journaling, where you can see a pattern of behavior. So journaling as opposed to a diary, it's not, yeah, I had a cup of coffee and I left the mug out and I got yelled at. That's not journaling. But I did this and this was the reaction and this is how I felt. And if you can find one of the diaries, it's a 5-year journal, where you will very quickly see patterns coming through over time that you can then address and pinpoint and work on those separately with a therapist, that you can go, okay, these are the things that constantly keep coming up. And these days with digital diaries and things like that, you've got that privacy and that security that certainly I didn't have. I wasn't allowed to have my bedroom door closed. I wasn't allowed to have lunch with friends. There's all those things because there was a control factor. These days with a digital diary and digital journal, passwords, you can have privacy these days that you couldn't have back then.
Yeah.
So, and I think that level, just having something that is your own and your private life that that is not able to be attacked is really important. So self-care and a bit of therapy and privacy, I think, are the big ones.
Is closing this conversation, there is anything that you want to remember that you're thankful for your mom?
I think she was actually a very independent woman. She would do long distance driving, and she had a career as a nurse. She was very independent and very feisty. So, and like that's something that I'm glad that I inherited those traits as well. And she was able to get on with different people really well, and she was also mentally very alert right until the very end. So there's some good genetics there. She died at an old age. She was mentally alert, very feisty, very independent. All great traits that the family needs to have handed down through them.
So, and you have all of them,
Yeah.
maybe. Oh, well, thank you so much, Amanda. That was a very good conversation. I think it's very important that we start to talk about these things more often, and especially husbands stand up and talk about these things, because we need to learn that there is this problem out there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it does need to be looked at in the context of that link between a narcissistic parent and domestic violence, because quite often it's directed at the dad that, oh, her father was like that, so she's attracted to the same kind of man. But what if it was the mother that had that coercive control, that she never learnt to have boundaries and see that for what it is? I think we've got to start looking into that stuff a lot more.
Thank you, Amanda. We are at the end of this interview. Thank you for all of you that you listen to this podcast. See you at the next POP, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that changed your life forever. Ciao.